Hello and welcome to Red Scott Gaming, and since the intro says we do top 10s, I guess it's about time we actually did one. Just me on my own today, as I'm going to be looking at my own personal top 10 video games of all time. So let's pretty much get right into it. Of course I am obligated to point out that this is an entirely subjective and personal listing. This is of course not me attempting to push a top 10 games ever, period, or anything like that kind of list. These are just the games which have had the biggest or longest lasting impact on my life personally, stuck in my memory, and I find fun to look back on or replay time and time again. Basically, I'm just trying to say, don't fucking complain if you disagree. But do feel free to post your own top 10 in the comments section below. But also, before we begin, I have to note that I am doing this list with the mindset that you may not have played these games. So while I am trying to sell these to you if that's the case, I'm also trying to make this spoiler free, or at least spoiler minimal. Unless I explicitly state otherwise and will reveal a small spoiler, in which case I will give a SPOILER warning for that particular instance. There is also going to be game footage, but lacking any context, it shouldn't be any more spoiling than any game trailer you may have seen. Anyway, I'm just saying, there is a threat of spoilers, but there really shouldn't be. Kind of like how anything you ever eat has a threat of nuts, even if not explicitly containing nuts or even being nut related. And it's really more of a legal thing to try and cover their ass in case anyone has a reaction. Anyway, let's go on this. Enjoy. Number 10. Released on the good old original PlayStation and later on the PC is the Resident Evil with dinosaurs action horror game Dino Crisis 2. A game which, along with its predecessor, is really one of those underrated classics in my opinion, unlike its far more popular zombie cousin with its movie adaptations and far greater pop cultural influence. In fact, there's a good chance that this game will be leaving a lot of people scratching their heads asking, Dino what? Yeah, with a B-movie title which would go great alongside Jurassic Attack or Mega Shark vs. Crocosaurus, and with admittedly a plot to match, it's hardly high art. But these games have always filled me with joy and dread, and still do to this day. Unlike the original game, which focused much more on the survival horror aspect, DC2 is an action-packed, dino-blasting, combo-racking funfest from the start to finish. Actually, yeah, I can't really think of any underwhelming or unenjoyable part of this game. Even a slightly slower underwater section about halfway through the game, which can sometimes be a bit of a pain in the ass to do, still manages to be one of the game's most on-edge, oh shit bubbles, straining to hear changes in the water current as a ravenous mosasaur accelerates you from somewhere off-screen encounters. While taking the action route may have killed a lot of the game's sense of fear, this game compensates with a lot more, well, fun, giving you a pretty expansive arsenal of unique, interesting, and overpowered weapons, while still managing to make you feel vulnerable, with its classic fixed camera never revealing the entire room you've just loaded into, having raptors pounce at you from any direction, forcing quick dodges and turns, or just by throwing you into a room with the Indestructosaurus. While the dinosaur and character models are obviously PS1, the environments in those backgrounds are just beautiful, in a harrowing kind of way, with its constant sense of decay and extinction. The cutscenes too are really high quality, a definite improvement over its predecessor with some impressive animation. The soundtrack in this game also is great, from the upbeat tempo as you race to some objective through the jungle, or the eerie choral music which plays at some points, to orchestral explosions during some of the largest encounters. Playing as two protagonists, Dylan and returning protagonist from the first game, Regina, the game switches between both of these two for different parts of the story, which involves a rescue operation, finding out the fate of a small town, research facility and nearby military base, which all disappeared in a cataclysmic accident involving science. Time travel, dinosaurs, you get the gist. But it does manage to have some emotional and really quite dark moments throughout the game, including something of a twist ending, I guess. Ever since playing this for the first time, at a friend's house at like 13, staying up all night to complete it from beginning to end, I must have now played through this game at least 5 or 6 times in its entirety. It's one of those games I by now know really well. Too fucking well. It's fun, it's atmospheric, it has motherfucking dinosaurs, and Regina's ass. By no means a perfect game, maybe by some standards not even good, but for me anyway, I'll always hold it in high regard. And I will most certainly be going back to replay this nostalgic part of my childhood many times still to come. Number 9. Jurassic Park Operation Genesis. What, dinosaurs again? Well, unfortunately there's only 2 on this list. Top 10 dinosaur games. Another time maybe. Anyway, back on point. I love Jurassic Park. The original film is my favourite movie of all time. I have the books by Michael Crichton. As a child, fuck it, I still do. I want to be in this world! Why can't this place be real? I want to be here! Why, damn it! Scrap trident nuclear weapons! Stop funding international wars! Get on genetically engineering dinosaurs! Or at least hyper-aggressive ostriches! But this game, Operation Genesis, actually lets you live your dream. Or my dream anyway, and build your own Jurassic Park. Of a similar vein to Zoo Tycoon, you manage and build your own Jurassic Park theme park, complete with cleaning staff, goat dispensers, and overly demanding cunty fucking visitors. And by God did I spend many a sunny Saturday afternoon sitting inside playing this game. In the core gameplay, the only real goal is to achieve a 5-star rating for your park. This is done by becoming as popular as possible, maximising the number of visitors, appealing to their varying tastes and interests, breeding as many different dinosaur species as possible by reconstructing their DNA from fossil finds, all while keeping your park financially viable and safe. Probably my biggest pro for this game is the dinosaurs themselves. While I would have personally appreciated a larger variety, but that's more just me being a big dino nerd, there are a load of different species to choose from already. All those seen in the movies, as well as a bunch of new names. Let's name them all, shall we? There's Velociraptor, Dryosaurus, Parasaurolophus, Allosaurus, Kentrosaurus, Carcharodontosaurus, Spinosaurus, and you get the point. For the larger ones anyway, particularly the large carnivores like T-Rex, the models look fantastic. The AI for all creatures are great as well, and uniquely tweaked from species to species, with social dinosaurs usually keeping together or moving in herds, while larger carnivores are strictly territorial and will fight for dominance. There are also factors of stress, loneliness, and the need to hunt, which all affect behaviour, including whether a rampage breaks out, and the dinosaur begins killing everything it sees and attempts to break out of its enclosure. Now, I would be lying if I didn't say that these parts of the game, even though you're meant to avoid them, are actually some of the most fun. Mass park panic, visitors running for safety, overcrowding in the security bunker, and oh no, what's this? The visitor centre along with the helipads has mysteriously disappeared because the park manager is a madman! A madman! The level of customization is pretty deep as well, from the shape of the island to the layout of the park itself. Unlike similar games I've played, this doesn't limit you to standard rectangular enclosures, one for each species. For example, you could have the visitor area of the park as an enclosed enclave in the heart of the island and keep the rest of the island a one big safari, with drivable Land Rovers, from the movies, making this possible. Or, another design, you could split the island in two, one side for carnivores, one side for herbivores. Maybe keep visitors on their own separate island altogether. You know, whatever you want to do, you can use a bit of creativity in the actual layout of the theme park. Characters from the movies are brought in to represent different advisors, such as Alan Grant for everything Dig related, Henry Wu for research and anything to do with cloning of the dinosaurs, and while some of the music is taken from the movies as well, there is a lot of John Williams-esque ambient, which gives it those extra Jurassic Park feels. On top of the core gameplay, there are bonus missions and the Site B feature, essentially get an island and just spawn as many dinosaurs as you want and just see how they live their lives. Add some extra things to do alongside. Always loved this game. If you're a fan of the movies or just of any kind of theme park world style simulation game, this is one that definitely comes recommended. Number 8. Now, while its bigger, more modern siblings have had a lot more mainstream popularity, I have to say that even with age, Fallout 2 is a shiny little irradiated gem of a game. A gem which you then find out is actually a lump of uranium and subsequently die from radiation poisoning. While the classic Fallouts might take a bit to get into if you started off with 3 or New Vegas, like I did, I would still highly recommend putting in the time and effort for a playthrough of Fallout 2. Before I continue, I have to point out that my first full playthrough of Fallout 2 was with the fan-made Restoration Project patch. However, it seems this has pretty much become the standard way for most people to play now, fixing a lot of bugs unfixed by the original developers, but also adding a lot of content as well. So I'm not always certain what was in the original game and what was content added by this patch, but whatever, it adds lots and fits it in more or less seamlessly, it seems. Fallout 2 starts some 80 years after the events of Fallout, in a village founded by the Vault Dweller, the player character from the original game. Watch my playthrough. And after going through an annoying as hell for first time players Temple of Trials, you are named the Chosen One and given the signature Vault 13 jumpsuit worn by your ancestor. Starting out similar to Fallout 1, you are sent off to find an item to save your people. This time, instead of a water chip, you have to find a Gek, the Garden of Eden creation kit. So, off you go. And the thing you'll find is with these games is that it doesn't hold your hand. You are told to find Vic the trader who might be in the next town over. And then, that's it. You're on your own. With all of half the west coast of former United States to wander. And from here is, in my opinion, the best story arc of the Fallout series. Involving a secretive, high-tech, militaristic group claiming to be the remnants of the United States government, known as the Enclave. Yeah, they come back later, but they did start here. Thankfully, as you will most likely get lost, the time limit before your people all die is long enough that exploration and getting massively sidetracked isn't punished like it was in the first game. In fact, in Fallout 2, it is rewarded. Though for this is, on one hand, a very dark game, the one thing you'll notice is it is funny. Genuinely, there is comedy in this game. None of the Fallouts are too serious. Well, maybe Tactics, I don't know, but I've never actually fucking played that piece of crap. But this one had some of the best moments in it. There are some totally batshit random encounters in the Wasteland, which I don't really want to spoil if you haven't encountered them all yourself, but to give one example, I was wandering west through the desert on a horse with no name, when I came across a bridge guarded by a robed figure.
Who approacheth the bridge of death must answer me these questions three. The other side he see.
Ask me the questions, Bridgekeeper, I'm not afraid.
What is your name?
Sir Robin of Camelot.
What is your quest?
To seek the Holy Grail.
What is the capital of Assyria?
I don't know that.
There are so many other great moments and characters and encounters I could talk about, like the Enclave drill sergeant who you get roped into doing guard duty for after infiltrating their base with stolen power armor.
I am not a sir! I work for a living, you moron! You will call me Sergeant or Sergeant Dornan. Do you understand me? If I like you, you can call me Sarge. But guess what? I don't like you!
And, yeah, no, actually you can't really top Dornan.
Moron! If I see you away from your post again, it will be the sorriest day of your short life!
So yeah, Fallout 2, very much perfection of the original Fallout game. Take that game and just make what was already good, all around better. A great little, funny, violent, dark, turn-based RPG. Oh, and one last thing, if you really want to make it even weirder, play with lowest intelligence.
Most people have evil spirits. You have stupid spirits.
You're a little slow, aren't you? Well, just keep moving and don't come back here. You'll be fine. Nobody gets... Damn. Need pass, get inside. You no got pass. You go away. You no go away, you get hurt. Understand?
Number 7. Killzone 2. In my personal opinion, one of the best depictions of war in a video game I've experienced. Not that war is something you necessarily want to experience, of course. Set in a space colonialist future in the midst of the Second Extrasolar War, a conflict between the rogue former human colony of Helghan and the ISA, the military branch of the United Colonial Nations, which essentially makes up all of human colonised space in this universe, minus Helghan, whose population, following years of perceived oppression by the rest of humanity, cut themselves off, have fallen under a fascist regime, and after years of living on their toxic world, have developed a huge superiority complex, resulting in the attempted annexation of their neighbouring planet of Vecta in the original game. Also the original homeworld of the Helghan, but that's a fact that's never brought too much into the limelight in this franchise, where there has always been a sense of moral ambiguity and propaganda from both sides. So while on the surface it's a standard good guys in blue versus bad guys in red, what I've always loved about these games is this moral ambiguity, prompting many fans to view the red-eyed, gas mask wearing, swastika brandishing antagonists as the real victims and even heroes of the franchise. But in Killzone 2, you play as Sergeant Sevchenko of the ISA, a well-funded international, or whatever the space version of that word is, coalition of peacekeepers, essentially the police of the human colonised universe. You are sent as the second wave of an invasion fleet against the third world, by comparison, Helghan. You are a technologically superior military machine, better equipped, better trained, ready to take down the Helghast government and bring the rogue Helghan once again into the fold. In and out in a matter of days, quickly wipe out their inferior forces and capture their leader to be brought back for war crimes. Sound familiar by any chance? And yet, despite all this, spoilers! You lose in the end. That's right, this game has you and your side, after going through everything you have through this entire game, lose at the end, and ultimately be defeated in a Pyrrhus victory for the Helghast, who sacrificed their own capital city in a nuclear detonation. War, man, what is it good for? So while there is a really intriguing story, which is what originally brought me to this game, for which I am now a fan of this entire franchise, having recently just played Killzone Shadowfall, it should also be said the graphics are beautiful, the score is amazing, and the gunplay itself, of course gameplay, who'd thought that was important, is actually pretty good, and can be extremely challenging on hardest difficulties. Fighting Radek on Elite difficulty. Fuck! Though some have commented on the floatiness of the weapon handling, I've always felt it gave it a bit of a real and weighted feel. Voice acting is okay. Apart from Brian Cox, who returns to reprise his role as the Helghast dictator Scholar Vazari. Fun fact, he comes from near where I live, even had the chance to meet him once in university. I would have asked him to sign my poster. As well as the voice of Vazari's personal guard and leader of the Helghast defense, Colonel Radek, who are both brilliant.
Report. What are their losses? I want this day to be a day of mourning for the ISA.
The enemy convoy has been decimated. The weapon performed adequately.
The third sequel, Killzone 3, tripped up a little bit, I felt, when it tried to include too much. Having you jump from the recently nuked city, to jungle, to snowy mountains, to space. The more simple linear story of 2 worked better. It gave the game a sense of realism, staying in and around the Helghan capital, the front line of this war. War-torn streets and slums, the military academy, the foundries and factories in the wastes outside the city, and one really good level on board your own Invasion Fleet's flagship. But anyway, Killzone 2. Great installment in a series I continue to be a fan of. Oh, and pretty awesome multiplayer. Number 6. Best 12 quid I ever spent. BioShock Infinite. This was one of those games I'd heard some good things about, that from what I'd seen looked appealing, and when I finally decided, fuck it, and tried the damn game, was blown away. I had trouble with the first BioShock, to which this is not really a continuation of, not a prequel, more or less an entirely new story just in the same universe. Or multiverse. I know a lot of people liked that first one, but I found it a little hard to actually get into. I'm going to go back and start it from the beginning again sometime, but anyway. I wondered if the same thing was going to happen to me with Infinite, which is what put me off for a while. But after a deliberately similar beginning of the game, a callback of course to the original of the series, I was immediately captivated by this world, and intrigued by my character's reason for being there. You play as a down-on-his-luck private detective Booker DeWitt, who, for whatever reason, was brought, or sent, to Colombia, an American city in the early 20th century which seceded from the United States by, well, flying the fuck away. Sounds magical? I know it's supposed to, with the city being under the iron heel of a theological patriarch, the self-styled Prophet Comstock. The truth is there was a lot more physics and quantum theory involved, architected by the enigmatic and superbly mad Lutece twins, but I suppose God has a lot more appeal. Immediate positives on this game? The setting is fantastic. I love the old-timey world settings in fiction, like in the Fallout games, and this. But here there's a mix of sort of steampunk, Civil War nostalgia, and a little bit of Les Miserables. The city is a self-styled utopia, venerating the founding fathers, its leader Comstock, and all values white, Christian, and American, while suffering rampant racism, xenophobia to the rest of the world, extreme poverty, demonising Abraham Lincoln and the freeing of the slaves, and spouting a great deal of historical revisionism. It's a scary place to be in once the blinders are lifted off, and the game shows little sympathy for the citizens of the city. I don't want to go into the story too much in case you haven't experienced it yourself, but I loved it, and that ending was rolling around in my mind for about 3 or 4 days afterwards. Elizabeth stole the show for me the most, a girl who has lived her life locked away in a tower, both revered and feared by the city's people because of her mysterious powers. But the main character of DeWitt, usually the blank slate for the player to put themselves into, was himself intriguing. Sent to this city with the words, "Bring us the girl and wipe away the debt," and you're never quite sure of his, and by extension your own, motivations, whether good or bad, selfish or selfless. And the interaction between both of our, ultimately, protagonists is great. And the game really has succeeded in making me care about these characters. I mean, isn't it great gaming has reached the point where you can actually say that? But of course, I'm only scratching the surface of this game here, trying to sell it to you while not giving anything away. Really, I just recommend experiencing this for yourself. Number 5. Did you ever have that one game you played excessively on the original PlayStation, assuming you had one? Well, for me, that would be the frustratingly addictive 2D death frenzy platformer that is Oddworld: Abe's Odyssey. Set on an alien world, you play as the Meducan Abe, a downtrodden worker in the Rupture Farms meat processing plant, who, along with most of his race, live as slaves to the massive Gluckin-run corporations on this world. While on the brink of driving the main cattle for its food products to extinction, scrabs and paramites, the Gluckin's solution for a new product line of something new and tasty is to turn on their own workforce. After accidentally discovering this plot, Abe is forced to escape the plant, and while on the run, free as many of his own people as he can. Or deliberately lead them to their deaths en masse for the pure lols.
Oops.
As I said, this game is a death fest. Maybe not on the same level as Dark Souls or the like of that, but nearly every encounter here is a trial and error puzzle, especially if you're going to go for perfection and save all 99 of your Meducan comrades. But the good thing is, Abe isn't allowed to die, so gets the joy of experiencing every way to die again and again and again. Disintegration, crushing, bees, impalement, predator attack, other predator attack, explosives, gunshots, falling from heights. Yeah, it's a good time. But you'll never have to go far back to restart, so it does remain more addictively fun than stressful. The world created for this game is imaginative as hell, both fantastical and yet grim. From the industrial hellhole of Rupture Farms, you also travel to the sun-baked lands of Scrabania, the forests of Paramonia, both beautifully rendered environments with the camera panning through rock formations as you traverse the otherwise two-dimensional world. All character designs are great, from the creatures to the slave driver Sligs, who will be the standard stormtrooper enemies encountered throughout the whole game. On top of the standard fare of platforming, a core feature of this game is speech. Talking to your fellow Meducans, giving them instructions like the lemmings they are, to lead them to their freedom.
Hello, follow me, okay.
Or to tell them to wait under a particularly nasty mechanical contraption and then pull the lever. Possessing an ability of Abe's, any of the guards will also open up that character's own dialogue options, in some cases allowing them to control their dog companions or just confuse other guards.
Here, boy. What?
Because despite some dark and grim tones, Oddworld is, at heart, a really funny game, with a good sense of humour even if pretty dark. The soundtrack, while not particularly grand or epic in the same scale as some of these other games, is still in my head after years of playing. And there is some good sound engineering as well, with music playing low and tense as you assess the dangerous situation. Then when you go to make your move to run for the next platform with a carnivorous scrab on your tail, the music will kick up the tempo, even changing beat to account for every jump or leap you make. All in all, it's a pretty well-made game, even coming with alternate endings depending on how many of your people you manage to save, giving you an incentive to play the more difficult side areas, which you do have the option to avoid altogether. It's a classic game that I'll still go back to and try to run through even today. You can pick it up for probably a couple quid on PlayStation Network, or probably somewhere pretty cheap on the PC as well. Definitely a satisfying and fun little adventure. Just gotta time those motherfucking long jumps right. Number 4. Getting pretty high on the list now. Number 4 of my top 10 games list is the third in the Elder Scrolls series, Morrowind. And Skyrim. the 5th in the same series. Sorry, but no, I cannot decide which of these two amazing, revolutionary RPGs of the same franchise is superior. On one hand, you have a challenging, intricate RPG with deep character skill and equipment customization, a unique world unseen in any other fantasy game, and one of the greatest soundtracks in gaming history. While on the other hand, you have a visually stunning, easily accessible RPG with fairly extensive appearance, character customization, satisfying combat, and also one of the greatest soundtracks in gaming history. They are two very similar games whose differences are equally advantageous. So let's make it simple and begin with those things shared. These games are built on player choice and freedom, providing open worlds to explore, not in a linear fashion, but totally unrestrained. Well, apart from the fucking cliff racers. Funnily enough, in both games you begin as a prisoner, where you will choose your character race and appearance, and in Morrowind your class and skills, and are freed, by whatever means, into an open world for you to make your mark. Sure, you are pointed in a direction and told to go there, but you have the freedom to say, fuck that, and climb the nearest mountain, or go into the nearest cave. Of course, in Skyrim, you can go into said cave and exterminate every bandit inside, loot their shit and sell to the nearest village, like the good entrepreneurial sociopath you are. In Morrowind, you will crawl into the cave, swing at bandits for a few moments before being mobbed, repeatedly stunned, and die because you tagged Longblade as one of your skills, but the beginning dagger you had was Small Blade and resulted in you constantly missing the target with every swing. The world of Tamriel, whether in the snowy Imperial province of Skyrim or on the island of Vardenfell in the heart of the eastern province of Morrowind, is a fascinating realm to explore. Books and people will share with you centuries of lore, and every city has something going on in it. And like any fan of these games will tell you, the best thing about living your life in this world is rarely actually the quest you've been set out on, but the side quests and the tangents in your story which you unintentionally stumble upon along the way. Whether it's a drunkard in a tavern who challenges you to a drinking game, resulting in you waking up hungover on the other side of the country with no memory of a trail of chaos you apparently left in your wake, or getting roped into filling the part of a play with only 5 in-game minutes of rehearsal, panically flicking through the script and having to fight off angry audience members when you perform a joke which insults the wrong denomination of people. Seriously, fuck those high-strung motherfuckers. But that's what these games have always done best. Exploration. Create vast worlds with loads to fucking do. Goddamn cliff racers! Honestly, nostalgia has a lot to do with my love of Morrowind, but even repurchasing it and playing it more recently, it's still this amazing world that is just so appealing to me. I love the land of Skyrim with its Nordic themes, but Morrowind is so much more alien. One part Far East, one part Mordor, one part Roman Provincial, and another fucking part Mushroom Kingdom. I mean, when you think fantasy RPG, what comes to mind in terms of enemies? Goblins, dragons, trolls? Not in Morrowind anyway. Try the alien-like Scribs and Quamas whose eggs are mined for export, Clanfear and Gwar, yeah, goddamn dinosaurs, the huge floating jellyfish like Netch, and cliff racers. That all said, one of the big inclusions in Skyrim, dragons, is not a bad thing, by no means at all. Skyrim may go for a more typical fantasy setting, but it's still an interesting one, with Nordic, Scandinavian, Pictish, and Imperial Roman themes once again. There may be more tame wildlife for the most non-flying lizard part, but it pulls it off well. The dragons, meanwhile, introduce this new dynamic to the game's combat, with these randomly occurring, often epic battles, of course less so after the 20th or 30th time, but still better than swinging off cliff racers. And the dragon powers that the player character is able to achieve, the shouts, add a new level of abilities outside of normal combat and magics. More than just that though, it just feels good to be the Dragonborn, a legendary being born with the soul of a dragon. It makes you feel sort of more godly, and a lot more significant than protagonists in past Elder Scrolls games. Dare I say, even a bit more like a celebrity in the world. Whatever, I could talk about both these games for pages longer, but I think this sums it up. If you want perhaps a more challenging RPG in a really fascinating open world with loads to do, Morrowind is a great game. If you want an RPG with a beautiful world setting with probably even more to do, with the great sandbox experience with powers and exploration, Skyrim is perfect. Both are hours and hours of gameplay anyway, that you will just get sucked into. Morrowind and Skyrim. What more could you want? Maybe mini nuclear bomb launchers? Number 3. Look. Mini nuclear bomb launcher. So, I already included the older Fallout 2 on this list, but even though New Vegas is another inclusion into the Fallout series, with a shared universe and everything which comes along with that, it, along with its parent game Fallout 3, are so different gameplay-wise, that with all intents and purposes, they are totally different games. So in other words, yes, I can put 2 Fallout games on this one list. New Vegas is, like Skyrim and Morrowind, an open-world RPG, produced by the same company, Bethesda, hence the shared style of game. When Bethesda bought over the rights to Fallout from Black Isle Studios, the developers of the original games, they started out with Fallout 3, which was great. However, for New Vegas, which came out not long after as a spin-off game to 3, a re-amalgamation of the original Black Isle team was brought in to actually develop it, under the banner of Obsidian. The result? An equally large, but far more player choice driven, multi-path experience, and in many ways a more direct sequel to the original games, being set on the same side of the country as them, as opposed to 3, which could be taken very much in isolation with regard to the rest of the series. New Vegas takes place in and around the former city of Las Vegas, including real-world landmarks like Hoover Dam, Goodsprings, and Nellis Air Force Base. The plot centres around an ongoing war between the New California Republic, a pre-war style society which emerged in power through the events of Fallout 1 and 2, and Caesar's Legion, a new faction to the series from Arizona in the east, modelling themselves after Imperial Roman society, and are generally unpleasant. In the middle, however, is Vegas, one of the last remaining more or less intact cities in the world, ruled over by a reclusive Mr. House, but as well as these are a number of other returning or new factions around the Mojave, from the Brotherhood of Steel to the remnants of the Enclave from Fallout 2. You play as the Courier, who was contracted to deliver a platinum chip to Mr. House, but was robbed on the road by a man named Benny and some hired thugs. You wake up in the neutral town of Goodsprings, fixed up by the badass of all badasses, Doc Mitchell, and set out to hunt down the man who shot you. But that is just the beginning. Before long, you'll be picking sides, or making your own, and setting up the pieces in preparation for the second Battle of Hoover Dam, which will decide the fate of New Vegas and all the West. This game is great, for most of the same reasons as Skyrim. Open, loads to do, character customization, but with modern and sci-fi technology in a post-apocalyptic environment. But what makes this game for me is the huge amount of replayability. There are 4, or 3.5, unique storylines that you can follow. You can fight for the NCR, join the Legion, help Mr. House defend against both sides, or follow through with House's plans, but for yourself, or rather, for an independent, anarchistic Vegas. You have a degree of customization in how you ultimately succeed. You can pick and choose which factions to try and persuade over to your side and help in the coming battle, or go it alone and wipe them all out altogether. But like a lot of these games, you're free to make it up as you go along. One time I joined Caesar, then about halfway through his storyline, once I was close and trusted, I assassinated him, leaving the Legion disorganised and leaderless, and brought in my own personal army of followers to wipe out their encamped forces, ultimately changing sides to fight for independence instead. But the thing was, none of that was an objective. It was a mission I literally just gave myself because, fuck it, Caesar's a prick, my followers all have power armour, and because I can. And it was something that I did on my own accord, which impacted the game world, with Legion forces now hunting me down, while the chatter about towns and NCR forces is of the death of their number one enemy. It is an impressively dynamic game in this regard. The world itself is expansive, with settlements and characters to find, great loot, weapons and armour, riches, and of course, hosts of mutated creatures. Whether a guns blazing armed and armoured madman or a stealth and sniper type, you can try talk your way out or into a situation, or use a miniature nuclear warhead to clear out a building. It's a game of choice, which doesn't punish you unreasonably for doing what you want. You can fail or miss out on missions if certain characters die, but it won't force you to return to a checkpoint mission failed. No, you just have to live with the consequences, whether they are good or bad. Like Fallout 2, I love the world. The old-timey, retro-futuristic environment, but also its post-apocalyptic setting. New Vegas keeps the humour of the series, as well as the sense of bleakness, although I will say it's not quite as miserable as the originals, or 3. All in all, it's one of the best games I've ever played, and I've played it to absolute death with God knows how many playthroughs now. And on this list, it's an easy 3rd place. Number 2. I will refrain from talking about this game's merits for like 74 pages, but realise this one really holds a special place to me. Well, when I say this one, I mean this 3. But they're undetachable and really are 3 parts of one massive game. And that is Mass Effect, the trilogy. I came to this series a little late, but while I was kept from its blessings for longer, it did mean I was able to play through all 3 of the individually pretty large games, at anything between 30 to 100 hours each, depending on how much time spent exploring and how much of a completionist you are, in the space of a single month. My god, that was a great month. This sci-fi series has achieved critical acclaim and is beloved by its fans, almost to a cultish level. It's one of those games where you can be, at a party, not really mingling very much or having much to talk about, then somebody on the other side of the room mentions Mass Effect and boom, Caden and Ashley, what did you think of the ending? Mass Effect follows Human Alliance soldier Commander Shepard, a customizable avatar for the player and the player's choices, but at the same time a complex character in his or her own right. Set in the future where humanity, who has been pushing towards the end of its own solar system through relatively primitive spaceflight, discovers ancient alien ruins on Mars, advancing human technology by centuries, but even more so, opens up the discovery of the mass relays, advanced alien constructs connecting to other points across the galaxy for near instant travel, becoming humanity's door to the universe beyond our own solar system. So, 2 decades of suddenly and startlingly accelerated cultural and technological development later, the human race has become the newest member on a galactic stage alongside other diverse races, all of which have at some point in their own history discovered the same advanced alien technology. Represented galactically by the Systems Alliance, humanity, in a push for more political power in the galactic community, looked to Commander Shepard as a candidate to put forward for the prestigious rank of Spectre, a Special Forces operative working for the Council of the Galactic Races. Now this is more or less the setup for this universe at the opening of the very first game. In itself, it is a really interesting story of humanity trying to overcome huge changes to its views of the universe and to come to terms with its own place within it. However, when things take a turn for the worst, it becomes clear that the Galactic Society is not as advanced or as safe as it thinks, with an ancient threat responsible for the destruction of civilization after civilization for eons in a cycle of galactic extinction is on the brink of returning once again.
Before us, you are nothing. Your extinction is inevitable. We are the end of everything. Oh my god.
As I said, I love this game. The story is huge, it's epic. I've always kind of looked at it as a sort of Lord of the Rings in space, or like the original Star Wars trilogy, in another kind of space. Part 1 introduces us to the world and the heroes we will be following. Part 2 takes our heroes, kicks them in the shins a little and ups the danger and the darkness. And Part 3 is when all the pieces come together and everything that has been set up until that point comes to its conclusion. Honestly, I love all 3 games pretty much equally, for slightly different reasons. 1 has probably the best self-inclusive story, and is of course the first look into this universe, with an emphasis on exploration and the lore. 2 takes what happens in 1 and starts to twist it on its head, with you forced to team up with what would probably be your enemy in any other circumstances, with massively improved combat and a bigger team of incredible characters, for the most part. Part 3 is by far the bleakest, but also probably the most beautiful, as you have to see this galaxy you've known and defended start to be torn apart. With the biggest leap in graphics, the most emotional turns, an utterly incredible soundtrack, and, well, it's the conclusion to this incredible story. An integral part of that story, and game, is the characters. If there's one thing BioWare does well, it's characters. I love these guys. Well, most of them. Tali, Liara, Garrus, Kasumi, Joker, Edie, Zaid, Morden, Grunt, Rex. You get to know each one, form your own friendship, even relationships with some. And it feels just genuine. Fox News once ran a piece on the filth that was Mass Effect, where you go around the galaxy having as much sex as possible.
And the ability for the players to engage in graphic sex and the person who's playing the game.
And here's how they're seeing women. They're seeing them as these objects of desire, as these...
First of all, you can actually play as a man or a woman in the game. Cooper, have you ever played Mass Effect?
No.
Though the fact Fox News doesn't like it should really convince you to give these games a go. If you have a relationship with a squad mate, it's important. There is genuine love between these characters. There are fallouts and makeups.
That's it. We just stop for a second. We'll be jumping several light years. There's time to talk.
The friendships you make with these characters, if you make them, are strong. You want to feel like these guys will follow you to the end. It's not a case of, here is Johnny, Johnny and you are old friends, care about him when he dies, because here is Johnny, Johnny and you are old friends, care about... And this game has real emotion in it. I have laughed, alone and out loud while playing this game, in the way I laugh with friends at the stupid humour only we get.
That's why I love hanging out with you guys.
I have shed tears while playing this game, something no other game has ever done. And you know what? It's because this isn't a game world where you're dropped into and told, you have to save because there's lots of people who are going to die and that's bad. No, they give you 2 games to immerse yourself in this galaxy, in its people, its cultures. They give you a reason to care, and only then, at the end, do they put it all in jeopardy. It's huge, it's immersive, and that's why I like it. Of all the games on this list, it's probably the one I would recommend most highly. It might not be for everyone's taste, a very story-based, dialogue-heavy RPG, but there's a good chance you'll end up loving it like I do. And though there is a feature to fill in the gaps from earlier games if you're starting from the 2nd or the 3rd, I'd say, if possible, really, play it from the start. Now, one last thing, there is a little problem some people have with the ending, and I totally get why. It is, by the standards set by the rest of the games and the rest of Mass Effect 3 up until that last point, pretty poor. No spoilers, but it's the fact that for a game where choice matters so much, where the ending promise was one determined by the sum of all of our actions up until that point, that wasn't really the case. Instead, your ending hinged almost entirely upon one final decision, independent of anything else you'd done up until that point. You could have been a complete dick or space Jesus, choose the same ending at the end of the last 5 minutes, and there's no difference. That aside though, it's pretty abrupt and it doesn't quite wrap things up that well. Unless you get the free extended cut DLC, which in my opinion, more or less fixes up those smaller issues, making the ending a little more cinematic and feel a lot less rushed. Definitely play the game with this installed if you want the ending to leave a bit of a better taste in your mouth. But really, that aside, it is an extraordinary trilogy. Number 1. All glory to the gaming! It's Half-Life 2, of course. Yes, the holy grail of first-person shooters, the one free game. Free as in liberated, but even in terms of price, it's always been a pretty good deal. Even given away free with its own Episode 2 continuation sequel. Am I rating this game too highly? Putting it on an undeserved pedestal like the fanboy I am? Sure, this might be true, but there are very good reasons why Half-Life 2 is considered by many fans and critics alike to be one of the best games ever made. It has a compelling story delivered through this run-down, dead and oppressive world, one of the most captivating just in terms of bleak realism, and seen entirely through the eyes of its mute protagonist. It has humour, emotion and a great human element, without actually really having to do much. Pretty little exposition, and what there is pretty cryptic at best and hardly revealing. No introductory text scroll or even real cutscenes for that matter. You are literally dropped into this world with no idea what the situation is, what your purpose is, or where you're even going. And it works. It's a fantastically finely crafted world, where they just have to sit back and let the player get absorbed into it. It has brilliant gameplay, with a, what might now actually be considered, nostalgic system of carrying an entire armoury of weapons with you and running and gunning down enemies. There is no special unlockable tactical abilities, holosites, complex squad command system, or any amount of other gimmicks modern shooters require a whole checklist of just to make their games appear something above average. Looking at you, Call of Duty. But a staple of Half-Life 2's gameplay has also been puzzle solving, pioneering the use of a game's physics engine as an integral part of the gameplay itself. Most notably with the inclusion of one of the best guns ever conceived, the gravity gun. With its physics, Half-Life 2 sees the player use the environment itself of the game as a weapon, with explosive barrels, melons, saw blades or enemy grenades used as your ammunition with the gravity gun. Or 0-point energy field manipulator. I've played this game way too much. It actually used as a part of the game's engine, which would normally just be running in the background to enhance the general realism of the game, and turns it around and makes it into a part of the game itself. In 2004 anyway, this was a big step. And to date, this is probably one of the few games that has managed to pull this off quite as well as it has. And that's the other thing. 2004! This game really was the first of the PS3 Xbox 360 generation, the 7th generation of games. The generation that is now only just rolling to its stop. But honestly, the game still holds up incredibly well. But I think the game's graphical brilliance speaks more testament to the game's development, and a huge reason why I place it at number 1. Valve created the game in Half-Life 1, which took steps beyond other games of that time, with storytelling, an effective, minimalistic, show-don't-tell type of storytelling for what could easily have been a complex narrative with cutscenes, prologues, and character monologues, and gameplay, again with that balance of imaginative gunplay, puzzles, and platforming. And for its time, it was visually impressive. For its sequel, Half-Life 2, Valve aimed to keep that same standard of improving upon the current generation of games, upping the bar way beyond what most could achieve. Not impressed? Well, it's a bar that game developers continue to aim for even today. The lore and backstory of this world is still a lively topic amongst gamers, from the history of Earth's subjugation under the interdimensional Combine, to the identity and goal of the enigmatic G-Man, the suited figure who has followed Freeman from a distance throughout the entire series, guiding or manipulating him, or perhaps even puppeteering all of these events that are taking place. After the catastrophic events of the first game, which saw a tear in space and time displace life forms from another dimension into our own, a catastrophe stopped and arguably caused by the game's silent hero, Dr. Gordon Freeman. 20 years have passed and the events of the Black Mesa incident have had far-reaching consequences. Earth has since been conquered in a brief but devastating 7-hour war, which saw the end of human reproduction, the multi-nation state world, and most every freedom. Freeman is returned by the G-Man to this world, suffering years of occupation to seemingly ignite revolution in City 17 that will bring about the downfall of Dr. Breen, administrator of the Earth and human puppet of the Combine, and the Combine's hold over the planet. With the help of Black Mesa scientists Eli and Dr. Kleiner, the resourceful Alex, former security guard and protagonist of previous Half-Life game Blue Shift, Barney Calhoun, as well as downtrodden citizens and former enemies alike, you journey through city, sewers, coast, prison, around a decaying Eastern European environment. Zombies, alien creatures, and the forces of an otherworldly empire will stand against you, and all will fall before the mighty crowbar of freedom. Fuck it, you probably know all about it anyway. It's fantastic, it's brilliant, it's my favourite game of all time. At number 1, it's Half-Life 2. So that's it, that's my top 10 games of all time. Thank you very much for watching. I realise this has been quite a long video. Sorry, just couldn't help myself. I love these games, and I had to just talk about every little thing that made them great. Once again, I'd love to hear your own top 10 in the comments below, or if you have your own opinions on any of these games that I've mentioned, please share them. If you haven't played any of these games and are now interested to, perhaps I've introduced them to you for the first time, please say so. Once again, thank you very much for watching. I have to say on a side note, this has been an absolute nightmare to actually edit and get to you. Most of this has been done for weeks. I've had huge computer problems, so hopefully this is up, and if you actually watch to the end of this, I appreciate it from the bottom of my freaking heart. And hopefully I will have shorter and less technically frustrating top 10 videos in the future. And other than that, Sam and I will be getting back to our usual schedule of playthroughs, as well as some new additions now that I have a PlayStation 4 with inbuilt recording ability. Love it. This is RedScotGaming. Subscribe, like, etc. Bye for now.